Hello, everyone. And in the United States right now, it's Ash Wednesday in case any of my viewers live outside of the United States. And uh, as you know, we will be continuing the selected poems of Samuel HaNagid. And part of the reason for this is from my experience growing up inside the church, while we do acknowledge Jesus was Jewish, the real connection or background of Judaism with Jesus is often overlooked. And while I would recommend, and I do recommend for anyone listening to this, look up the readings and teachings of Hillel the Elder, since from most Jewish scholars' point of view, Jesus probably really was a rabbi or had rabbinical connections, hence why he would know many of the Pharisees, or at least know of the Pharisees he interacted with in the Gospels. And more than likely, he had a connection to the Hillelist party of the Pharisees in the Great Sanhedrin. Hence, why when he was tried before the Great Sanhedrin and the Romans, um, a lot of the Hillelists would try to vote to acquit him, but unfortunately they were outvoted by the more conservative or restrained part of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And a few of the Zealots that were still part of the Great Sanhedrin at this point. And while obviously Samuel HaNagid came after Jesus by about 1,000 years, um, understanding his version of using the poetry style of the Psalms and the literary connection that he is trying to make with traditional poetry writing of the Hebrew language, granted, translate in this case, is probably a decent lesson or way to start the beginning of the season of Lent. So, with that out of the way, our first poem is The War with Yadir, um, and has some background given to us. And Yadir, the commander, came to the place known as Argona in the year 4801, and in the Hebrew calendar, or 1041 in our calendar. And with him were Wazil and Mafwak, both of them well-known officers among the Andalusian leaders, and they overcame Argona and killed the commander of the city. Afterward, they marched to a place known as Samantin and overcame most of the castle there. And then our forces went out against them, and the hand of God was with them, and they killed Wasil and Mafwak, and Yadir fled until he was trapped in Cordoba, and he was taken from there and imprisoned in the Castle Munkir. And my lord, my father, spoke of what happened to him, and how he fared, praising God for granting him this great victory. Look away from me, friend, open your heart and hear my plan. Would you scare me with false accusations? What would I fear with the rock as my light and salvation? You have been in my circle, but if you persist in your slander, I'll count you as alien and cruel. No good could come of one who exalts himself over my family. No peace to him who threatens my city. If you can't keep from your mouths evil and insist on rebellion, like the house of the rebel. Turn to me, friends, and listen, then weigh his word against mine. He disputes my lines with kings. This, I say, is my lot and inheritance. He fears the face of their wrath, my refuge and hope. I respond is in God. What are these battles to you? He asks, and I answer, the place of my death and burial is set, and the Lord who sent me, seraphs in a dream, will save me. If I were rotting away with sin, could I stop it? My book holds my destiny. There are people who die before their time, like Zimri, who reigned for a week, or Tivani, and others who face neither struggle nor war, but are buried just like the Egyptian whom Moses saw. There are those who are swept away for want of righteousness, and others in life who go hungry, poor, and alone. Leave off me now. Maybe I'd spend my days in prosperity, a turban above me. I drink still water from my well in the cup of deliverance, and running water drawn from my river. It is right to despise my inheritance, and not rejoice in my portion and fate. If your heart hurts for my future and refuses to fathom my wealth and splendor, because of the fire and war I come through year by year, fear, my Lord, for your own as for mine, though you are healthy at home and calm. I trust in the Lord who humbled my foes in snares, concealed for my footsteps when the enemy came to the garrison city and slaughtered its vizier like a calf. He was a foe in the line of my king, and the evil of stranger pales. Beside the evil of kin, two of the Spanish princes were there, and the Zemarite troops, and they seized the city, then advanced like a pestilence, destroying the fortress. We went out to stop them, and he broke them before us, and August discovered their heads on stones, not in the orchards and grass. We brought them down to the ground like birds in the air who had raised their wings on high. We chased them in clusters, 4 and 5, like olives from a tree the worker has beaten. We slew them 2 against 3. Like long vows against short in a word, we struck them the blow that had leveled the armies of Og and Sion. The princes were stricken, rewarded for their obstinance, and all of it ended, except for the 9 who fled. Yadir, a 10th, pursued until he was brought like a gift, or tribute, that summer to my king. My friend, for me and my straits, the rock rose up, therefore I offer these praises. My poem to the Lord, he recognized fear of Yadir in my heart and erased it. So my song is sung to the healer. He ravaged my enemies with pain, easing my own. Someone objected, who are you to pay homage? I answered, I, I, the David of my age. He responded, is Saul too with the prophets? And I told him, the heir of Murray, Sitri, Asir, Elkanah, Mishal, Elsphan, and Azoph. How could the poem and the mouth be improper to the God who heals my wound? From Jeduthun, the singer of psalms, my father descends, and I from my father. For the Lord I sweeten my song, and its discourse as he embitters my enemy's heart. As he has pledged to vanquish my foes, so I pledge my song to soothe him, to worship him day by day in my labor, as daily he pays my wage. The next poem is on lifting the siege. When those who were laying siege to Lorca heard the troops were approaching the sea, they quickly fled, and our troops sped towards Lorca and camped there, where he wrote me the following. Send this pigeon a messenger, although she can speak with a brief letter tied to her wings, dipped in saffron and scented with myrrh, and once she's off and away, send on another. If one falls prey to a falcon, or net's mesh, or delay, the other will cover, hurrying on. When she reaches the house of Joseph, she'll throw him from the rafters, flutter down to his fingers, and humor him like a sparrow. He'll loosen the knot on the note and read, "No, my son, as you hold this, the cursed enemy has fled and scatters itself on paths and hills. Like chaff driven by wind, or shepherdless sheep confused, without having seen its enemies except in surmise, on our way to the root, they fled into darkness, bringing death on themselves and each other. In panic crossing the river, they who had hoped were humbled, at a wall they held fast. Like a thief caught in the storehouse, the look of disgrace like a cape to their faces, the shame on them clinging like the caul that covers the liver. And they drank from the beaker of scandal, drank deep and were drunk. I've had in my heart the fear of death, like that of a woman's first labor, but the Lord came across it like a downpour in drought, and my eyes brightened as my foes went dim. For gladness itself I sing, while he moans dirges. Now my home is the voice of delight, his of bilious complaint. To you, my rock, my highest tower, my soul sings out, in my need you had mercy prepared. Put your heart, my son, in the hand of my God, and bring these praises before the people. Make them an amulet bound to your arm, to be cut on your heart with a stylus of iron and lead. The next poem is Your Manuscript Shines. And he had me copy in my youth and promised me compensation for every notebook, and I sent him what I copied, and then he wrote me the following. Your manuscript shines like inlays of emeralds, its margins arranged like a robe well embroidered, a feast for the eyes like a tree's first figs, its scent like myrrh on the perfumed bride. Read transcribed and focus your heart on the law of the ark, and its curtain as you add. I'll add to your fee, Joseph. Write with an iron pen in your book, and be written within me, and not on my skin. Love for you to the walls of my heart, and the chambers is held. My rebukes have been open, my love is concealed. To Joseph, his son. And I was sick with algodory, which is boils, in Tammuz 4804, or June 1044. And he was camped at Estiga, and they hid my illness from him until my condition has improved, and then wrote him about, and he wrote me these stanzas. Heart's grief like sharp arrows through me as never before. Though we met no resistance, then why this sorrow? I thought of Joseph, my faithful, in my heart a continual wound, for hearts understand what comes to their love across distance. For 8 days he suffered within me. How do we manage or carry despair, our flesh not made of brass, our strength not that of stones? On the 9th day they told me Joseph is ill, covered with boils, and weak from fighting. His bones full of fire, his mouth full of sores. He'd been stricken with pain for 8 days, graver than 80 of evil. And the heads of all who came to visit were fountains of tears, their eyes like pools. Though they said that his fever had broken, the pain receded, and the white boils burst on his skin, that his eyes were shielded by the Lord's hand, which shields all. Who shield their faith, Joseph? Your illness disperses my sleep, while others are resting, and draws me away from tactics and law, from briefings and leading the people. I'm sick with the service of kings, who are ready only for war, and live for a letter from your right hand, with news of your cure. Then praise like the crown played on the temple of time will be given, and thanks to him who has shown me greatness like sand on the shore, and the rain from clouds, and my soul, which was anxious, will sigh. Your sickness, my son, is herald. A necklace will honor your bride. The boils breaking a signal, you'll bear illustrious buds to our people, and the whitish spots proclaim, specks of silver will shine on the bride's dress, and your groom's crown, as your skin presages beautiful stitches to cover the cloth of the canopy, and you'll be lifted like the wounds across your flesh to power and onto the council of elders. So guard your soul as the illness withdraws, and eat what the doctors prescribe. Ignore the faithless, and if you find with God's grace health, read and write of the things that amaze you, for your mind will lift you beyond consultations, and raise you higher than rank. As you rise above your own generation, in your seeking out newness, the ancient and hidden, then you'll be like Joseph, confirmed among brothers, and like Asher, blessed above sons. And sorry to distract from the poetry, these poems remind us that despite how much time Samuel had to be away from his son because of his position and all the wars that were being fought during the first Taifa period, his pride and joy was always his son. He wanted to be a good father, and we can tell by the dedication Joseph did in editing his poems and trying to compile them in his lifetime. Joseph did reciprocate those feelings towards his father. Just they had to spend a lot of time apart, and unfortunately, Joseph will inherit the Grand Viziership, and unfortunately, because he wasn't his father and the times were changing, and soon zealots would take over Al Andalus, he would not live long past his father. The next poem is Pass of Sand. And when he went out to fight against Osuna Emperor, he passed through a place that was full of sand. In the year 4806 or 1046, and he had already crossed there in his youth when he fled Cordoba during the great battle, and he said, Pass of Sand, have you heard how I passed alone and afraid, as I fled through you with my stave? Now I cross you with hordes who listen to me as a father, and wait for my word as for rain, and look to my thought as a vision, and because the Lord my God has blessed them wherever I've turned. They are willingly drawn to my cord. And the last poem today is Among My Friends. And he found God honor him, that his body and strength were diminishing with age in the battle that took place in the summer uh, 4814 or 1054, and he recited this poem of lament. Among my friends could I find a heart more bitter than mine? Among my neighbors, a woman whose wailing is greater, or someone to grant me the legs of a hind to run to the jackals, who teach me to mourn for my youth. After 61 years that I've passed, is there left a hair's breadth space in my soul for the singers? And now that the sky withholds the bright cloud of my boyhood, will time still shed its dew on my paths? After the light of my youth has been dim, can I pour as before the choicest of oils in my lamp for a flame? The graves of my friends have spoken and say I'll join them soon. To pitch my tent in their world, if I can't recover my power, take up a shovel and start on my tomb. Aging grief has set in my heart a flaming fire, whose tongues makes ash of my hair. Weakness has wakened the pain in my knees. I struggle now even at court on level ground. I grieve for the soul which is dear to me. And it's right that one mourns what is dear, for I've been, as my beard grows white, a spot on the walls of my heart, darkened with age like soot on a pot. If I had time in my power, I'd bind it with cord, and keep it from lifting a hand to my hair, and yet, were it only the fire of suffering that rose to my head, the pain of that heat would be to me juice from the winepress. But age has drained the youth from my face, and now the young women despise me. Who could help me to be like God and know if the day of my death were distant or near, when I'll be breathless dust in the grave, or when from the dust my spirit will rise? My heart insists I've longed to live, if my body grieves. May the Lord Almighty heal its wounds. May He grant me strength in my weakness, and power like that of eagle's wings in my limbs. May He sustain me in His goodness and mercy. I put my trust and hope in the Lord as long as I live. They say there's rest in the grave, though I fear I'll meet my choices. Death they call going on to the fathers, and they are right. The fathers are there. But why, when I die, will they hurry my corpse to the shades of the world below? From the shadow of roof and home, and why wrap my flesh in a shroud? When both in the dirt will decay, why use water to cleanse me when tomorrow the stench at my waist will pollute me? Ages and ages have been on the earth, and I, Lord, am nothing among them. You sent me out in the world before I asked for life, and gave me at birth to destruction, a source of misfortune. A stone to start trouble, you made me fine to behold, but soon will alter my form. And your actions were righteous, and your words have been faithful, while the breath of mine and my mouth have been snake-like. Bring me a scroll and my ink and pen, and today I'll inscribe my confession, like Afresh my eyes will flow when they read, because in the grave there won't be tears and I'll weep. For the excellent for my friends will rush to the grave, appointed for all, for the noble form to be covered in dust, and for the dust in its mouth and over its eyes, and my tongue which has told of my life will lie in its box, like a stone in the heart of the sea, and my eyes which have witnessed much wonder will rot in their sockets, consumed in a hole. My palate will lose its savor and speech, my ears will fail in their hearing, my arms and legs will be still. And most bitter, like this, I'll be called from the grave to justice. All my deeds will be weighed in its balance. Merit to one side, sin to the other, and maybe an angel will speak of my virtue and raise the side of transgression, and the side of merit bring down. He'll remind in my judgment the rock and my diligent study of scripture and law, and I'll hear, the Lord in your work has long found favor. Then the scales will tilt towards merit, and I'll rejoice in my passing, to the great glory of God, which will gather me as it gathers the moon and stars. And with that, we will end a little bit early today. Y'all have a good rest of your day, and hope you enjoyed.